Well, good morning, everybody. How are we all? Good, good. Bit cold? No? Good, good. Well, I am now going to take you 12,000 miles to some Pacific sunshine, where yesterday it was 26 degrees in Auckland, 22 degrees in Queenstown on South Island, with a nice light breeze coming across Lake Wakatipu. But before we do that, a few introductions. My name's John Lightwood. I'm director of a company called Silver Fern Holidays. And, well, we've been working, living, traveling in New Zealand for about 25 years now. And I'm lucky today because I also have Mark standing over here on my right, who is from Tourism New Zealand. Just checking I'm saying all the right things, so he may interrupt at specific moments to put me right.
If you want any fact-checking, just let me know. I'll follow on.
And we better find out who you are. So, how many of you, could we have a show of hands, are thinking of going to New Zealand in the next 12, 18 months? Very good, thank you. How many of you have already been there, had such a fantastic time, that you are going back? Good, good. How many here for a quiet kip? Yeah. And do we have any Australians in the audience? No? Good. I just want to know where the heckles are coming from. Right. Okay, well, to our presentation, which is New Zealand, why its magnificent landscapes should be on your bucket list. Well, at great expense, the Olympia have given me the bucket. So I asked my staff to write down the places in New Zealand on their list last week. And as you can see, it is quite a long list. And I have got about half an hour to tell you about it all. So no pressure. But what that does mean is, and a gentleman asked me a minute ago, how long should I spend in New Zealand? Well, it is a minimum of 3 weeks, folks. Don't do your 6-week tour in Australia and then stick 1 week on at the end. But I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment. What I'm going to do is begin with a short video, hopefully to get you inspired by some of those landscapes, and then we'll take you on a little more detailed tour around the country. Here we are. I hope that's given you a little bit of inspiration, some idea of some of those tremendous landscapes that you will encounter in New Zealand. I'm going to move on now to one of my favorite slides, images, showing my age. And this shows, obviously, a picture of the UK with New Zealand superimposed on top. And that gives you an idea of the land mass. So, same size as the UK, but we have, 62 million? New Zealand, 4.5 million people, of which 1.5 million live in Auckland. So, once you're outside Auckland, folks, plenty of space, plenty of easy driving along open roads, very little traffic, and very much a laid-back, relaxed lifestyle. So, what time of year should you think about going? Well, the main season is between October and March. But as Mark may tell you, New Zealand had its record tourist figures last year and is probably on the way to beating them this year. So January, February is very high season, very booked up. And if you can get yourself into the shoulder season, October, November, nice spring weather, you've still got the snow on the tops of the mountains, you've got lupins coming out near Mount Cook. Really nice time to go, not so many people on the road, not so many people in some of the hotels and accommodations. And then towards the end of the season, as I said, as you get towards March, April, okay, you're moving the back end of summer into the autumn, but still very nice weather, and again, not so many people on the road. Also, probably a cheaper time to get your flights, so do bear that in mind. Length of time, I think I said before, 3 weeks minimum, otherwise you're shortchanging yourselves. If you can go to 4 weeks or even more, then great. And the general rule of thumb is, excuse me, a third of your time on the North Island, 2/3 of your time on the South. And that's not because there's anything wrong with the North, it's just that in the South you have 9 national parks, 2 World Heritage Parks. So you can see the main iconic sites, which is Milford Sound, Doubtful Sound, Mount Cook and the glaciers, they are all on that South Island. So that's generally a good rule of thumb. How to get there? Well, these days, the world's your oyster. You've got so many airlines doing different routes. You've got Emirates, Singapore Airlines, Air New Zealand, Cathay Pacific, British Airways. It's very much down to you which way you wish to travel. And you can come and see us afterwards to talk about some of those options. What I would suggest is you do have a stopover. It is a hell of a long way. So, a 2-night stopover, for example, in Singapore on the way out, I'm not saying it will totally kill your jet lag, but it will certainly help. So that's my recommendation on that. And how to travel around? Well, we generally suggest a mix. We do small group journeys in which you go with a small group and up to 16 people, where you've got someone driving and pointing out the different highlights for you, or by car, and a mix of train and boat, Shanks's pony and bike even. So think about, as I said, mixing that up. You don't want to be sort of constantly driving all the time. You are on holiday. So when we speak to people, we very much look towards 2-night stays as a minimum in most places. It might be a good time now, if you've got a map to hand, I am now going to take you on that more detailed journey around the country. And I'm going to be starting in Auckland. So if you can find that on your maps. This is the first part of the geography lesson. And we will be heading up in a northerly direction towards the Bay of Islands to begin with. So, most of you will arrive into Auckland, which is the largest city in New Zealand, the city of sails, and you can see why it's called that. It has recently had quite an improvement to its harbour front because we've had the Rugby World Cup and before that the America's World Cup. So the whole of the harbour front has been extensively refurbished, as it were. Lots of nice restaurants, small cafes, and also the starting point for many trips out to the small islands in the Hauraki Maritime Gulf. This is central Auckland with the Sky Tower. You can head on up there for some fantastic views, and if you're daft enough, you can do a bungee jump off it, apparently. And this is the harbour front, as I said, now bustling with different cafes, small shops, boutiques, and it is the starting point, as I was saying, for trips out from what's called Customs House out to the Hauraki Maritime Gulf. And there you've got a number of islands, which are only about 30 minutes away. Really nice day trip. You can go out just for a general trip on the harbour, or you can go over to one of the islands that you can see from the foreshore. That's Rangitoto. It's the youngest volcanic island in the Gulf. And from there, you can do a walk to the top, and you get some fantastic views across back to Auckland and to the other islands in the Gulf. The other island that we suggest is Tirimatangi. And the reason we suggest that, it is a conservation island that has got all the native New Zealand birds that you are likely to encounter on your trip around New Zealand. So well worth going. There's a group of dedicated volunteers there, and they'll tell you all about the peculiar pukekos and the other bird life there that you, as I said, will meet on your journey through the country. I'm now going to head up north towards the Bay of Islands. So I'm going along the coastline, and I'm coming up to what is called the Tana Mahuta tree, which is the largest, the oldest kauri tree in New Zealand, if not the world. And there, a Maori guide can take you into the forest and tell you a little bit about the legends behind the tree and the forest. And that drive takes you up the west coast, and that's a 6-hour drive to what is known as the Bay of Islands. And this is a beautiful subtropical region and a lovely bay that hasn't changed that much since the 1850s, when it was known as the hellhole of the South Pacific, because it had all the ne'er-do-well whalers, Australians, and others who came over and caused havoc with the Maoris. So there we also have what is called Waitangi, which is a fabulous area, and you can visit the Waitangi Visitor Museum that's recently been refurbished. It's a huge visitor centre now, and it is telling the story of really New Zealand's history, which very much began, well, it didn't begin, but certainly the compromise as it was at the time between the British Crown and 144 Maori chiefs on the 6th of February 1840. The Maoris saw it as the British were going to come over and protect them from these horrible Australians. And, of course, the British saw it in a different way. They saw it as a land grab, and that really then relates back to some of the controversies which you will sort of hear about as you travel through the country. So, well worth visiting that. And also going out, and you can do a nice cruise. This is to a hole in the rock. You can see the dolphins in the Pacific waters. You can even swim with them if you are so inclined. So plenty to do there. Pretty well all the year round, but clearly there are some times, I mean, during the main season, there's many more boats going out. I am moving quickly on, because I am a bit against the clock, and I'm coming south from Auckland now, and then I am taking a left-hand turn, as it was, and coming towards what's called the Coromandel Peninsula. So that's that little peninsula that sticks out on the eastern seaboard. And this area is known for its fabulous beaches, and also for what is known as Hot Springs Beach, where you can go down and you can dig your own little sauna and paddle about there, and also walk down to what's known as Cathedral Cove, which is a lovely walk, and you can do a little bit of swimming, scuba diving, sitting on the beach and contemplating what a wonderful place you are in. All right, well, from there you will carry on down that coastline, and this is close to what's called Mount Maunganui, again, a lovely beach area. And then you can turn inland, and this area has now become quite a tourist attraction since the Lord of the Rings film got such exposure across the world. And they were going to close this set down, and then they realized they were getting more and more visitors. And this is known as Hobbiton, so if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, this is a definite stopover for you. You could do a farm stay in this area, lots of nice sort of rolling farm country, stay with a family there and learn a little bit about farming life in New Zealand. And then the other option is to go to what is known as the Waitomo Caves. And these are glowworm caves. You can go out on a boat with a guide, very impressive, and then you can continue on your journey to Rotorua. So if you carry on down through to Rotorua, you will smell it before you get there. It is known as the geothermal centre of New Zealand. This is the bathhouse. Gosh, you could almost be back in southern England somewhere, couldn't you? There are the ladies playing their croquet. There is now some Maori exhibitions in the bathhouse, and nearby there are the government gardens. Very attractive. Nice gentle walks down by the lake there, and then you can go to Tipua, which is not only an area of geothermal activity, but it is the area where you will see many of the Maori arts and crafts. So you can head to that. You can get some quite nice gifts there. And the other day out that, dare I say it, not many operators talk about that much, but I think is a fantastic trip. And this is to what is known as the Waimangu Valley. And that was caused by the eruption of Mount Tarawea in 1860. And what it did was devastate one of the great natural wonders of the world at that time, the pink and white terraces. And here you can see some of our Victorian tourists enjoying their time. Now the valley is one you can walk down and enjoy seeing all that different geothermal activity on an easy downhill walk, and you can see all these features fairly close up. It takes you down all the way to a place called Lake Rotomahana, and you can go out on a nice boat trip there, which ends at what's called the Buried Village, which is where one of the villages was subsumed during that particular earthquake. And in the evening, why not go out for a Maori hangi, which is a look at the way Maoris traditionally cook their food. It's a great night out. One of the ones I suggest is run by a company called Tamaki. There are lots of different operators in Rotorua, but this one's out in the forest area. You get quite an authentic feel for the Maori culture, how they cook their food, and a good cultural performance. And now I am moving from Rotorua, and I'm heading down towards Lake Taupo. So this is Lake Taupo, and there you can sit on the promenade, have a nice cappuccino, and look across towards the three volcanoes of Tongariro National Park. They are Ruapehu, Ngauruhoe, and Tongariro. And this is where you've got a choice, folks, really, for most people who are within the 3-4 weeks. You've got the choice of the two W's. You can either head towards Tongariro for some walking, or you can go down towards Napier for some wine. So there you are, difficult choice. I'm starting off first with some walking, in Tongariro National Park, the second national park in the world, 1870, and as I said, dominated by these 3 volcanoes. Not that much accommodation there. So you've got the great chateau where the Queen stays when she's on her visit to New Zealand, but behind there's what's known as the Scotel, shall we say at slightly more reasonable rates. And you can treat yourself to a meal out in the chateau in one of their public rooms. But you can also think about doing the best one-day walk in New Zealand, which is called the Tongariro Alpine Crossing, and that will take you 8 hours, folks. So you do need to be reasonably fit. But there are also some extremely nice short walks. Taranaki Falls, Silica Rapids, and the visitor centre there is very well set up, as most of them are in New Zealand, and I'll give you the different options. Very important you do call in there beforehand, because this area, I mean, there's not much point going up here if you're going to get low cloud. So you do need to get a good weather forecast. But if you get up to that height, these are the type of views that you will get. This is looking back at the emerald pools there, and I can assure you on a good day, well worth doing. Actually, it's the bit coming down that's more difficult than the going up. Right, I said the other option was to go towards Napier. And Napier is known because it is probably the best preserved Art Deco town in the world. It was devastated by an earthquake in 1930 and then rebuilt according to the architecture of the day, which was Art Deco. And you can go and meet a guide at the visitor centre. It's not expensive, about $17, $18. And they will take you around and point out all the different aspects of Art Deco. You can also obviously go out and enjoy some of those wonderful Sauvignon Blancs, some of those Cloudy Bay wines. Here you can go for either a specific excursion or just go out there yourself to one of the boutique wineries, and you can either do it by car, by coach, or if you're feeling up to it, a bike ride through the vineyards. Yes. And then you are carrying on down from either Napier or Tongariro to Wellington. Unless you've got relatives or you particularly want to stop at a specific place en route, you know, it's nice countryside between the two, but bearing in mind all the features you've got in the South Island, it's not really worth making a stop betwixt Tongariro or Napier and Wellington. It's about a 5-hour drive, and there you will come in to the capital with the harbour, and a number of different things you can do there. One of the things that we suggest is to take a cable car, Kelbourne cable car, up to the top for the views, and then you can walk back down through the Botanic Gardens. And you'll come round by the Parliament buildings, down to Lambton Quay, and you can continue then to what is the National Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa. Some great exhibitions in there, well worth going to if you have the time. We also have a bit of an in there with some of our guides, and you can do a behind-the-scenes tour as well, and they will tell you a lot about particularly the early Maori history and how the European explorers found their way through New Zealand. So, how am I doing? I'm doing all right. So, we are now moving on to the South Island, and we're going to take a cruise. So, if you've done a self-drive, you will just leave your car at Wellington, unless you're hiring a rent-a-dent car. The standard car hire companies won't allow you to take the car over on the boat. So you leave the car, you take your luggage off. It's all very well done. You take your luggage on, they'll put it on one side, and you go and sit up on deck, and you do that glorious 3-hour cruise across the Cook Strait. And you will be coming into Picton at the top here, and the Marlborough Sounds. And this is the type of scenery that you will be coming into. Wonderful area. And when you get to Picton, this is where you will land, as it were. You can then obviously take another hire car. We suggest with many of our travellers to forget that. There is a coach which actually does meet the boat. We're not in the UK now. And you can, from there, do a lovely journey across to Nelson. And the reason we suggest that is because you are headed towards what I think is one of the best coastlines in the world, Abel Tasman National Park. And this area is a stunning area of sounds that you can walk through. I've jumped slightly ahead. This is Queen Charlotte Sound. Some nice accommodations in this area and some lovely coastal walks. Also a chance to do some kayaking. And the boat goes up and down the coastline. It drops people off for one-day walks, people off that are doing 3-day walks or 5-day walks, people doing kayaking, doing walking. How they get the logistics together, I have no idea, but it's a fabulous operation. And you can just sit on a beach there, go for a swim, enjoy a picnic, and then meet the boat at the end of their trip up the coastline. And that's the type of path you're walking on, very easy. My 10-year-old did it a couple of years ago. And as I said, you've got a choice there as to how long you want to be out in the park. And then from Nelson, you then have also got another choice, and that is either to go east or to go west. Now, if you go east, there has been a slight change because there was an earthquake about 3 months ago which hit very close to an area called Kaikoura. And that is the main area for the whale watching. That disrupted, completely devastated some area of the train line that goes between Picton and Christchurch, and also much of the road. So that is still an ongoing situation. However, you can still go that way by going through what's called the Lewis Pass. You could stop at Hamner Springs and then finish up down at Christchurch. Or, as I said, you can take the other route onto the west coast. I'm going to take the eastern route, and the reason I'm doing that is because when I get down to Christchurch, I have the option there, so I haven't necessarily taken a car yet, because I can take a coach across from Nelson to Nelson, then a coach down to Christchurch, and then I've got the fantastic Transalpine train going right across the Southern Alps. An amazing journey. I get at the end there on the west coast to Greymouth, and I can then hire a car from there and make my way down the west coast. And this is the type of scenery you're going to see, very different to that you've engaged with before. Rainforest coming right down to the sea level, chance to do some nice walks en route as you head down towards the seal colony, and you will be making your way towards the glaciers. En route, there's a nice little town called Hokitika, and I often advise people to stay there rather than Greymouth. It's a bit more of a real New Zealand town, you know, different from some of the tourist areas. So you've got a lot of cooperative crafts there. You've got jade carving, glass blowing, wood carving. If you want to buy any souvenirs, much cheaper than going towards Queenstown. So nice bed and breakfast as well, all the way along this coastline. And as I said, we are then going to head down towards the amazing Franz Josef and Fox glaciers. And I would stay overnight at the glaciers. You can walk to the glaciers, you can walk on the glaciers, you can fly over the glaciers. Very much down to what you want to do and also what the weather conditions are at that time. I have to tell you that the West Coast has the highest rainfall in the Southern Hemisphere, so at some point, folks, you are going to get wet. So do make sure you're taking that rain gear with you. You can, as I said, take a trip with a guide. You can take the flight. But you must promise me that when you get to Fox Glacier, you will turn right off the road and you will come down to what is called Lake Matterson. And you can walk around there to the view of views. You'll all have your cameras with you, and that's the type of shot you'll take of Mount Cook, of Mount Wakefield, and the footstool. Nice new cafe there, so when you've done all that, you've done your walk, have your cup of coffee, and then head down over what's called the Haas Pass. And that will again take you into a completely different environment of Mount Aspiring National Park. And this will take you to Wanaka. Wanaka, I think, is very underrated. Everyone charges down to Queenstown. You'll see all the coaches going to Queenstown. Nothing wrong with Queenstown, and I think you should do a stop there. But my suggestion is to have a look in at Wanaka, because this is a lovely area of lakes, of mountains, and some very nice trips you can do out. This is very easy, half-day walk, actually, coming up to the top of Rocky Mountain Diamond Lake, and those are the type of views you have. And this is the Matukituki Valley. You can walk along it, or you can take a jet boat ride up it, much cheaper than in Queenstown, with a Maori guide, and really enjoy some fabulous scenery. So think about, after you've done those one nights as you go down the coast, doing 3 nights in Wanaka. Rob Roy Glacier as well, and I think, as I mentioned to you, a chance to take a trip out. And this is one of the trips to the nearby islands. You can do that as a day excursion. And hey, wouldn't you raise your hands like that if you got that view? So, as I said, Wanaka, very much one of my favourite areas. This is the jet boat trip up the valley. And then you have the sister of Wanaka, if you like, Queenstown. And some guy in the 1980s came up with this mad idea of putting an elastic band around somebody's waist and pushing them off a bridge. Queenstown suddenly became this adventure centre of New Zealand, if not the world. I have to say, apart from all the balmy adventure things that you can do there are a lot of very nice sedate activities as well. You can do some walks through the park. You can do a day trip out on the Lake Wakatipu. Or you can do a gentle bicycle ride. And there's some electric bikes now you can take. We did it last time we were down there. Gets you out into the countryside, away from all the, as I said, adventure activities. And these are the type of views that you will get. So this is a TSS Earnslaw. It's a 100-year-old steamship, and it goes up and down Lake Wakatipu to a farm station where you can have afternoon tea there, watch them doing a bit of sheep shearing, and come back. Or, it's a bit like the Lake District. You go 10 minutes away from Ambleside and there's nobody. So if you just head on down towards somewhere like Glenorchy, you will find very few people around. You can do a nice gentle walk around the lakes there, some photography. And this area was in that BBC programme. It's a drama. I think it's called The Lake, something like that, or The End of the Lake. Top of the Lake, okay. This is where it's all filmed, so I think there's a new series coming on, and yes, this is the area it's filmed. So I'm moving now from Queenstown towards a little place called Te Anau. And that's important because it is the gateway to Fiordland National Park, one of the great national parks of the world, and there you have a fantastic choice. You have a trip out to Milford Sound, and if you're doing that and you're with a car, I should leave the car at the hotel, take the coach out. You've got a coach with panoramic windows. You really don't want to be driving with your head down when you've got all this fabulous scenery around. And then you can join with the boat and you can do a day trip out on the Sound. You can see all the wonderful features, but you can also be looking at things like the Fiordland penguins on the way. You can head out towards Doubtful Sound as well. That's another possibility. You can also do an overnight cruise. Absolutely fantastic. You go out on the boat, all the different boats have long gone back, most of the visitors have gone. You're out there, there's only about 50 people on the boat, and you'll stop somewhere, you'll put the anchor down, switch off all the engines, and you just listen to the sounds of silence, the birds. And he'll also give you the option to take kayaks down and do a little bit of kayaking. It's almost primeval, I can tell you. So that's a really good idea if you've got the chance. And hey, the arrangements on board are fantastic. Really good food. Okay, you're not in luxury accommodation, but pretty reasonable cabins and a very good welcome as well. So that, again, if you can afford it, because it is more expensive, obviously, than a day trip, that's well worth doing. If you are a walker, you have the option to do probably one of the finest walks in the world, the Milford Track. And that's a sort of 5-day package, if you like, stopping at different lodges along the way. This is the type of valley you will walk through, and then you'll begin your climb up what's called the McKinnon Pass, and you will have absolutely stunning views from that. There are excellent lodges along the way. Don't feel as though you're slumming it, You will have wine with your meals, and there are guides all the way through to point out the main features of the walk. So if you're interested in walking, you can do that, as I said, as a 5-day package. But now they've also got 1-day trips that you can do there. Well worthwhile thinking about. Right, I am now moving on quickly towards the east coast. This is Dunedin. You can see a bit of Scottish architecture there, and renowned for the Otago Peninsula. I would not drive out there either. Very winding road. I just go with a minibus tour or something out to see the Royal Albatross and some of the bird life there. Excellent day out, and you'll probably have someone with you there who can tell you all about the countryside. This is Mount Cook, so I've now left Dunedin and I'm quickly moving on up. And you'll be stopping on the way because you're going to be going past Lake Pukaki, some lovely views of Mount Cook. And if you're going in November, folks, there you are. That's what springtime offers you, the lupins. When you get to Mount Cook, you leave all our visitors behind with their cameras, and you just walk 100 yards down that track, and you will see the mighty Mount Cook, the highest mountain in the southern hemisphere, and you can walk all the way up to a small glacial lake, if you wish, and have terrific, very close-up views of the mountain. That looks a bit more dramatic than it is, to be honest. We're not in Malaysia now. We haven't got swinging bridges. They are fairly sturdy. And that is the scenery you'll encounter as you drive back or as you drive towards it. Moving on, we are now at Lake Tekapo, and these are the views to the little church there. If you climb the mountain, which is called Mount John, you can see where the Canterbury University has their telescopes. And if you are an astronomer, you can go for an overnight trip there, and they are extremely good at pointing out all the different stars, the galaxies, and so forth. Right, between Lake Tekapo and Christchurch, you are moving right across the Canterbury Plains. Not really worth doing a stop off there unless you particularly want to. And you are heading to Christchurch, which you probably all know was hit by an amazing earthquake, a devastating earthquake in February 2011. And they are now still doing a lot of reconstruction, but the Botanic Gardens, Hagley Park, and the museum area was not affected, so you can still do some lovely walks through there. And you can also walk down to what is called the Restart Mall, and that's where, with typical Kiwi ingenuity, they brought in a lot of containers off the ships and created this whole shopping mall. So that's well worth going to, as is walks around the Port Hills close by. And there we are, folks. That is coming towards the end of our trip around New Zealand. I know I've done that in a fairly fast manner. If you'd like to take it a bit more slowly, I shall be here afterwards, but we'll be on stand AP99. Mark is here. We are only a New Zealand specialist. We don't try and cover the rest of the globe. So we'll help you there with planning your trip, putting together a program. And for those of you who may still be thinking about going, umming and ahhing, I would like to end with my favorite quote from Mark Twain, which is, in 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off those bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Thank you very much.